Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon. Welcome, Confidentials. This is an important breaking news because we've never been so close to uncovering the alleged electoral fraud by Pedro Sanchez on July 23, 2023. The indictment of his close friend, the fifth one in the Peugeot, Juan Macerano, the one he installed at Correos and who ruined it. With 1,200 million in losses, that indictment could be the key to discovering in his WhatsApp messages with Leire in his ties to the president what we believe happened, and we are going to try to prove today. Gentlemen, Sanchez has been illegally occupying the position of Prime Minister of Spain since July 23, 2023. There is no need to look for no confidence motions or when the indictment against him comes, which it will, request that Congress lift his immunity. We need to investigate how that electoral fraud was allowed on July 23 and how they did it. Today we will give you the key details. It was a plan meticulously prepared a year and a half earlier, we believe, under the direction of Pedro Sanchez and left in the hands of his friend Juan Macerat. That's precisely why he put him at Correos, not so he would manage it well. Neither Serrano nor Sanchez ever cared about managing the postal service. They cared about managing mail-in voting. Sanchez was aware that his second term was getting complicated. In just 3 years, he had done the exact opposite of what he promised his own people. He brought Podemos into the government, made deals with Bildu, pardoned members of the Procés, and even granted amnesty to the Catalan coup plotters. And yes, Sanchez believed he was going to lose, that for the next 4 years he wouldn't be able to serve as prime minister. The proof is that on that day, on the night of July 23rd, 2023, they hadn't even prepared a stage at the door of the PSOE headquarters on Faraz Street, and they improvised that. They saw a crane so that the accused, like Santos Cerdan or Begoña Gomez and the rest of their friends, could go up there. He relied entirely on a meticulous plan that was set in motion, we believe, on Sanchez's orders by Juan Macerano, his closest friend. He received the assignment, and the first thing he did was hire Leire Díez, a woman capable of anything. Just ask the neighbors in the town in Cantabria where Vega de Paz lives. Do they still remember that day when she got into a fight with a neighbor and showed up in front of his house with a huge machete shouting, "I have to deal with you"? Today we're going to tell you in detail how that plan was meticulously crafted a year in advance so that Sanchez could secure enough of a majority to stay in Moncloa, although we believe he is an illegitimate president and has been occupying it illegally since that date. We have proof that Correos lied, that it left more than 500,000 people who wanted to vote by mail without voting, and they were mostly right-wing voters. We have proof that it was possible to access the Correos website to manipulate the mail-in vote. And all of this, gentlemen, under the supervision of Juan Macerano, Leire Díez, and the leadership of Pedro Sanchez. And it worked out for him because no opposition party challenged that election result. Because all the evidence that you are going to discover here today was given to the Electoral Board. We presented it and they said it wasn't their responsibility. And because there was no interest in finding where the fraud was, which wasn't that hard, Pedro Sanchez's move also worked out for him, and 3 years later he's ready to repeat it, to commit alleged electoral fraud again, this time with the Nietzsche law. Gentlemen, Pedro Sanchez is an illegitimate president who should not be in the Moncloa Palace. We have the evidence. We'll tell you about them in a minute. Only €2.03 a month. Protect yourself with CyberGhost VPN. Gentlemen, perhaps the most important thing is to prove that Leire could have done it, that she was in the right place at the right time. And what do we believe? She was put there at that moment because she was part of the plan we're telling you about. The plan to commit alleged electoral fraud. Gabriel Araujo, you already know him, computer forensics expert. Friend, how are you?
How are you? Hi, Albert. Greetings to all the confidenciales.
When you asked Correos if Leire Díez could have a hand in the postal vote, they told you no. In fact, I have a letter that you published on social media. The viewers can see it right now, and it says no, that Leire was handling philately matters and not much else. Correos told the truth.
No. Obviously, they lied, and I also pointed it out at the time on social media in the sense that Leire Díez also had a specific power of attorney to act on behalf of Correos before the Central Electoral Board. So it's extremely serious that Correos has lied so blatantly about this issue, especially since all the investigations and UCO reports are indeed pointing to this, and even the former director of Correos, Juan Manuel Terrano, who would be involved in these schemes of Ferran's Dirty Ops network.
Take a look, for example, at what Vox Populi published. He admits that he had the legal power to validate postal votes from his position at Correos. What's more, she herself confessed it in a tweet. We're looking at that message where she says goodbye to her people. She says, "For almost a year, I have managed the entire network of Correos offices in Spain, more than 2,500 offices, more than 9,400 people." And she adds, it's a full-on confession. Do you remember the mail-in voting from the last general elections? Well, we were there working hand in hand with this whole amazing team at the main headquarters. To put it simply, Correos lied to you.
Right? Exactly. Well, that post was on Leire Díez's Facebook page, but what matters is that he left Correos to directly take care of the dirty work at Ferras. This is the conclusion we can draw from all this because immediately after leaving Correos, he started working right after Pedro Sanchez's 5 days of reflection and this whole story that we already know very well, right? So well, indeed, in their own words. According to Leire Díez's own words, with all the evidence and indications we have, there is no doubt that Correos has blatantly lied about this matter.
Right? Gentlemen, Leire was allegedly placed in Correos to commit mail-in voting fraud and later placed in the political sewer to bribe, blackmail, and threaten judges, prosecutors, journalists, and civil guard officers. Real press messages from series like Objective reporting that the Electoral Board proved that Leire did intervene in the mail-in vote. You are seeing it. I say this because they want us to forget that Leire was there and placed by Juan Macerano, who will be indicted soon. In fact, there's a photo you sent me that clearly shows who manages our vote. I see Marlaska on one side, Juan Macerano on the other, and they're clearly close friends, right? Yes.
And very happy. And this was after the election in a photo from 2023, right? Then there's a photo where Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero also appears. Anyway, these are photos that now become very important and at least make sense to the public. For us, it was very clear when we saw them. We'd known since the first shows on your channel. We talked about these issues. So, well, we're glad that the public has really gotten involved in this issue now, in investigating, in learning all of this. And well, we believe that the evidence is absolutely irrefutable and overwhelming, right?
Absolutely, but there are many ways. How did Leire do it? We wonder. That's the main question. It wasn't just one action, there were several. The first is choosing the date, July 23rd. Therefore, never in the history of Spain had anyone called elections on July 23rd. As we already told you, they were supposed to be in November, and he moved them up to that date. Why? To get more than 2.5 million people to vote by mail. It was all a prearranged plan. How many people couldn't vote for different reasons, Gabriel?
Well, the unions acknowledge about 350,000 people, 350,000 Spaniards who couldn't exercise their right to vote, having processed everything perfectly in order and within the law, right? But actually, the estimates are about 500,000 people. Just look at the double standard over the deadlines for citizenship applications. That, yes, you can submit whenever you want, but here, really, the people who submitted their voting request on time haven't received the documentation. Also, the testimonies are absolutely chilling and very significant because they specifically come from voters in conservative areas of Madrid, for example, from, well, many areas of Castilla y León as well, from areas that traditionally vote conservative. Conservative areas where the documentation to vote hasn't arrived, right?
Let it be clear, 500,000 votes. If they had gone to parties like Vox or the PP, they would have changed the election result, right?
Completely, because let's remember that in many districts and even in Madrid itself, it was by very few votes that the last seat was decided, right? And also in similar cases in Austria, for example, in the state of Styria, they had to repeat the elections just because in a small district people couldn't vote because they didn't receive the documentation. Just imagine, friends, what should have happened in Spain with that 500,000 Spaniards who couldn't vote.
We're telling you about the plan, allegedly, yes, whatever you want, but we're convinced it existed. To rig the vote on July 23rd with the help of Moncloa, Leire Díez, Juan Macerano, and a team of other people. Correos lied, saying they would open offices that weekend because there were so many requests for mail-in voting that they said, on Saturday, and even if necessary on Sunday, we'll open. You're seeing it in the press and online. Everyone announced it, and they didn't say it was just in one area. No, they were going to open offices all over Spain. Look at what happened in Bodilla del Monte. Their own mayor tells us about it.
Hello neighbors, as noted on the Correos door sign, there is a special schedule from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. until the electoral process ends. The electoral process isn't over. Today is Saturday, and it has been closed all afternoon. Dozens of residents complained because they came to drop off their ballots but couldn't since Correos was closed. I assume it will be closed tomorrow, Sunday too. I think everyone's concern about voting by mail is huge, and even the unions, including the Correos Union, Comisiones Obreras, have reported it. I don't think it's serious. I don't think it's proper that with 1 week left before the elections and the neighbors needing to deliver their vote in the coming days, they are so relaxed it's closed and not all the votes have been delivered to all the neighbors.
In which places were offices closed if they didn't open all weekend, Gabriel?
Well, coincidentally, those were conservative voting areas. Here we've even heard the mayor himself complaining that he couldn't vote either. And also, there are plenty of photos of lines in front of the closed offices with citizens waiting to be able to vote. In other areas, for example, in the Salamanca neighborhood in Madrid, also in areas of San Sebastián de los Reyes, also in Madrid, which are traditionally, as I said, conservative voting areas, but they found the doors closed. The post offices were completely shut. So we're here seeing that several factors have come together for the mail-in vote to overwhelmingly favor the left. Otegi Tesano himself acknowledges this. More than 50% of the mail-in votes have gone to PSOE and Sumar, while PP and Vox have only managed to reach a meager 34%.
We are seeing that manipulated CS report from Tesanos. And also, for example, this message from the Salamanca neighborhood says, in our building, 6 people requested to vote by mail. Only 1 was able to do so. The ballots never arrived. The news that offices were being closed appeared in the press. It was reported. The unions at the post office also spoke out. Did anyone investigate anything?
Nothing. In fact, everything related to the post office issue is completely validated, even by the Central Electoral Board. Let's remember that in 2023, Miguel Colmenero, the president of the Central Electoral Board, fully endorsed the mail-in voting process on the part of, especially just a few days before July 23rd. So apparently, what's really happening here is closing ranks around the post office and nothing is going on here, right?
Nothing ever happens until it does, because there's one more detail. You're a computer forensics expert. There was a possibility, and that was to vote and get the ballot. And the online ballot, requesting it, you could go to the post office or request it online. You went to the post office website. It was easy to delete. Let's say there's an evil hacker who wants the records of 100,000 people who requested it to disappear, and they don't get the envelope. It's easy to do this.
This is one of the possible reasons why 500,000 Spaniards were unable to vote on July 23rd. The thing is, I've discovered 236 vulnerabilities on the Postal Service website, and I was even able to access the server and see the folders. And specifically, there was a folder there, Elections, which was absolutely outrageous because in that sense, by seeing it, a malicious actor could. Let's say from a cybersecurity standpoint, I'm an ethical hacker, and that's why immediately when I found these vulnerabilities, I immediately sent an email to Correos, to the data protection officer. However, well, I never got a response. But here we are seeing, friends, that indeed through that form on the Correos website that says individuals for citizen mail-in voting, well, through the form, it was possible to inject malicious code. There we are seeing the response from that form, and indeed we also see the elections folder, which can clearly be seen on the left and which could be accessed. I haven't accessed it because as system auditors, what we do is take a snapshot showing that it's possible to enter, but we don't actually go in, right? But in that case, it could have been accessed.
Here you say there's a 200, okay, 200 what?
Well, no, this is actually a confirmation from the server that the malicious code attempt was successful. That is, when it says 200 what, it says, okay, it's the server responding that you're actually in, right? Through that form as we're seeing, right? A big thank you.
These are the vulnerabilities that you found to get into the Correos website. This is wide open. Anyone with minimal knowledge could get in here.
Exactly. Well, I wouldn't say minimal, but you do need to have knowledge of hacking. But anyway, there are a lot of vulnerabilities in different types of problems. Normally, when there might be a security hole, it's usually just one or two types of issue. But here we're seeing at least 14 different types of vulnerabilities. It means that the Correos website has really been very poorly implemented with very poor maintenance. And this is obviously in a sensitive process like this one. Como son procesos electorales, it completely fails to comply with the national security framework, right?
Hey, did the Correos website go down those days?
The Correos, Ministry of the Interior, and Central Electoral Board websites all went down.
When there are elections, the ministry's website goes down, Correos website goes down, the board's website goes down. When the website goes down is when it's easier for a hacker to get in and change things, right?
Exactly. Well, it could be external or internal as well. When it goes down and no one is watching the data, that's when they start looking. That's when the magic happens, right? That vote inflation we've seen, for example, in the case of the European Assembly Board, with those 2 hours of total information blackout on the Ministry of the Interior's website, the Info Electoral app. So when the website goes down, strange things start to happen, right? Okay.
Gabriel, we've been saying for 4 years that elections in Spain are not clean. Now it seems that the investigation involving Juan Mascherano, and we'll see his phone, the UCO has requested to know what's on his phone. I hope to find that message that says how the fix is going and if you've already managed to close the offices. When we go on the website, will they leave any trace? Because you're showing me undeniable evidence that something happened that day, right?
Yes, besides, we presented all of this to the Central Electoral Board, and, well, this expert report has been completely rejected with all the evidence and everything. It was rejected because it states the Central Electoral Board lacks jurisdiction here. And then, well, to the Correos website itself, also to the data protection officer, as I said, we've told them that these vulnerabilities are extremely serious, and it exposes citizens' data even more, which later on, we're seeing that there are leaks, there are reports of leaks of Spaniards' data, and here no one is taking responsibility. And there's really a marked negligence when it comes to taking care of Spaniards' data.
Gabriel, thank you for your work, as always, sending you a big hug.
Same to you. Have a great weekend. See you soon.
Gentlemen, this is Gabriel Araujo, computer forensics expert. This was a plan. It was set in motion in 2021 when the government put Leire in the right place. In a year and a half, elections are called. Leire helps make Sanchez's victory happen, and he has her as his right-hand woman for Plan B for the dirty work. When there's dirty work to be done, that's when Leire and her loyal soldiers are there. We told you this week that Leire 10 was negotiating with the prosecutor's office to confess to crimes. Let her do it soon, but let her also talk about this, not just about the threats and extortion. Let her talk about electoral fraud. Let her finally say once and for all how they did it, if it was as we reported, who gave the order, and how many more times it has been done, because we fear that constant trial runs are still happening in regional and municipal elections as well. Welcome, friends. We investigate. Browse safely with CyberGhost. Castillon
Confidential.
by Albert Castillon.